major signs of the end of time will be terrible trials, or supernatural events for some of them. But first of all, it is interesting to quote this hadith where all the signs are detailed. The hour will not come until appear 10 signs before it. He mentioned the false Messiah, Al-Mahdi-Dajjal, the coming of Isa ibn Maryam, Gog and Magog, Dabatul Ard, the beast of the earth, the smoke, the rising of the sun in its place of setting, and 3 collapses of the earth, one in the west, one in the east, and one in the Arabian Peninsula. And the last of that will be the emergence of a fire from Yemen, from the lowest part of Adam, and drive mankind to their place of assembly. But there are differing opinions about their order of appearance. Many people think that the coming of Al-Mahdi will be the first sign. It is important to specify that he is not a prophet, but a man who will practice religion the right way and will guide the Ummah. He will be a descendant of the Prophet, more precisely of the descent of Ali and Fatima. He will bear the same name as the Prophet, and his father will bear the same name as the father of the Prophet, and he will come during a time of trouble, a time where the Ummah will suffer, and a large part of the Muslims will be led astray. He will appear at a time of many earthquakes, and when people are consumed in dispute and caught up in fighting and killing. He will fill the earth with justice and equity, where before it had been filled with tyranny and injustice. The people of the earth and the inhabitants of heaven will be pleased with him, and he will distribute wealth equitably. There are differences in hadith regarding the place where he will appear. There are those who say that he will appear in the east, and others in the Maghreb, but he will not know that he is the Mahdi, until God inspire him and guide him when he was not before. It is useful to specify that before the arrival of the Imam al-Mahdi, Islam will be seen as something strange by many people, as it is said in this hadith. Indeed, Islam began as something strange, and it will return to being strange, just as it began. So glad tidings of paradise before the strangers. This hadith refers to the Ummah before the end of times, so Muslims will be misunderstood by the majority of the population. It was said to the Prophet, "Who are they?" He responded, "Those who rectify themselves when the people have become corrupt." The Mahdi will be a guidance for the Ummah, and it is recommended to follow him, but following him may not be easy, because the hadiths tell us that the closer we get to the hour, the more difficult it will be to practice religion correctly, as it stated in this hadith. There shall come upon the people a time in which the one who is passionate upon his religion will be like the one holding on to a burning ember. We must understand from this hadith that Muslims who want to practice their religion correctly will be fought by other peoples, and can even also by other Muslims. And it is the Mahdi who will recognize Nabi Isa when he arrives. A group among my Ummah will continue to fight for the truth until Jesus, the son of Mary, will descend. And the Imam of them will ask him to lead the prayer, but Jesus replies, "You have more right to it, and verily Allah has honored some of you over others in this Ummah." And together they will fight the Dajjal. According to the hadith of the Prophet, the Dajjal, or the false Messiah, will be the greatest trial that Muslims will have to face. Al-Mahdi-Dajjal will be a harder trial than it appears. The word Dajjal comes from the verb Dajjala, which means to deceive or conceal the truth. The Dajjal is the one who will cover the earth with lies, clothe truth with falsehood, or conceal the truth. The hadiths are clear and teach us that the majority of the world's population will be with him and will believe in him. He will claim to the world that he is the Messiah and will perform wonders. There are several hadiths that make a physical description of the Dajjal. It can be confusing because some describe him as the greatest being of the creation, and others say he is stocky and short. Some descriptions say he has a reddish skin, and others a fair skin tone. But all the hadiths agree that he will be one-eyed. Al-Masih ad-Dajjal is blind in the right eye, and his eye looks like a protruding grape. And we can see that the hadiths make a physical description of Dajjal, which is unflattering. So much so that why a large part of the population will want to follow him. And even more in our time, a time when people give so much importance to the physical appearance. Here is another hadith, where the Prophet describes the Dajjal. While I was asleep, circumambulating the Kaaba in my dream, suddenly I saw a red-complexioned, fat, curly-haired man blind in the right eye, which looked like a bulging out grape. There are several theories about this. First of all, you must know that the visions that the Prophet had were in his dreams. And dreams do not represent reality, but there is a symbolism that is not always easy to interpret, like the fact that he is blind in the right eye rather than the left does not have the same meaning in the dream. There are also other outlandish theories that suggest that the Dajjal will not be a man, but rather an organization like the Freemason, the Illuminatis, the Internet, and so on. But the hadiths are clear, even if there are contradictions in some of them. It will indeed be a man. And what we must remember is that the truthful believers will recognize him. Maybe only believers will see him for what he really is, while others will be under his spell and see him in an idyllic way. Just as believers will be able to read Kafir, disbeliever, on his forehead, while others will not see anything. When he claims to be the Messiah and everyone follows him, we'll have to go against the grain and refuse what he offers to us. Part of his fitna will be that he will have with him paradise and hell, but his hell will be a paradise and his paradise a hell. We have to choose the way that seems the most complicated, as explained in this hadith with other words. I surely know what the false Messiah will have with him. He will have 2 flowing rivers, one that appears to be clear water and another that appears to be blazing fire. If one of you see that, let him go to the river of fire, lower his gaze, put his head down, and drink from it, for it will be cool water. The Prophet ﷺ transmitted to us that we must learn the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kaf. Surah Al-Kaf has a great value. It tells us the story of the people of the cave, who fled the persecution they suffered at their time and took refuge in a cave. What could be an extreme but effective solution to escape the troubles of Dajjal? We also learn the story of Nabi Musa and Al-Qadir and the story of Dhul-Qarnayn, the construction of the wall imprisoning Gog and Magog, and the loss of those who believe they are on the right path when they are go astray and blinded. The companions asked how long the Dajjal will stay on earth, and the Prophet ﷺ told them, 40 days, one day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week, and the rest of his days like your days. This hadith has given rise to various interpretations, Some have suggested that he was already present on earth in another form, for his presence counting as a year, as well as that which counts for a month, and that he only has to affirm to be the Messiah and to take the place of the world leader, to carry out the rest of his days. So there are several opinions on how the Dajjal will manifest. And what we must remember is that the truthful believers will be able to recognize him. But it will be a hard trial, and we will have to flee the Dajjal, because he will be able to make us doubt, and some will deny their faith. It is also important to specify that the Prophet transmitted to us as a sign before his coming is that he will no longer be mentioned in the mosque during the sermons. And it's a topic I've never heard mentioned, just like most of you. May God guide us, bring us his protection, and strengthen us for his trial.